Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of this little tutorial series. I have here the car that we've been texturing over the time, or adding materials to. And what I'm going to do now is go through a Packshot style of render, and this is where you have just the object, in this case the car, and a white background and nothing else. There's various different ways of getting this effect, and I might go through a couple of them. First of all though, I need a camera, so over here in the cameras window, right click new camera, double click to make it active, and the first thing I need to do is go to my camera parameters and set this up. First thing I like to do is the sensor resolution. Default is 640 by 480, that's not what I want, so I'm going to make sure the lock is clicked and then the aspect ratio is locked, and in my case I'm going to put 1920 and then unlock in 1080, and then lock again just to be sure you don't mess it up. Next is a focal length. 35 is a bit low, so I'm going to put in 50. F-stop, leave that as it is. Lock the exposure and put the EV number down a little bit. 9 is kind of a default for me for this kind of image. That might be a bit low for this HDRI. This HDRI seems to be quite bright actually compared to some others, so I might need to put that up, but we'll see in a minute. I'm going to activate fire so I know what I'm looking at, and even out these windows a little bit. And just get my camera angle roughly where I want it. That looks good. And like I said, this HDRI seems to be a bit bright, so it is blowing out a little bit to the side, but we'll see what it looks like once we've got our backplane in here, and that's the next thing to do. So File, Library, Objects, Primitives, Studio, and you want to import it. If you open it, it'll get rid of the rest of your model, so just import it. And as you can see, it kind of puts it right in the middle, right in the way. So select it in the Object Manager, and then select the Rotate tool with the make sure the Object mode is enabled, and then just manually spin it round until it's roughly right. Might need a bit more. It's all going to be dependent on your viewing angle. And we've got this little gap here that we need to get rid of, so go back to the Move tool, manually with the blue handle, just bring it forward a little bit. And that might look okay in the fire window, but actually if we go to our top display and zoom out a little bit, we can actually see it's intersecting the car. So what we need to do is actually go back to 3D mode, get the scale tool and click on the grey box in the center. That'll scale all axes equally, then drag to the left, make it bigger, and then we can go back to the Move tool and move it back a bit. It's best to just have it just big enough, but in some cases it doesn't make that much difference. Just double check with the top view. That's nice. You might want it a little bit smaller than that, but if it's not interfering with your scene too much, it doesn't really matter. And what's nice about this studio backplane is it's actually getting rid of that orange light, because the orange light is currently behind the car, and the studio backplane is blocking that out, so it's not having any effect, which is nice. It was a bit strong. And I can tweak my exposure if I think that it's still a bit too bright. It might be some up, put the EV number up a little bit, and just make sure that the camera is focused. It looks like it is focused because our reticule is not saying any red or blue, but just to make sure, I'll autofocus the camera. So it's now focused to the just at the intersection of the bodywork and the bumper at that point. Okay, next is the material for our backplane, and just right click new material in Materials Manager, double click to open it up, and I'm going to leave the roughness at 100%, and for the reflectance 0 I'm just going to click and drag the reflectance 90 color up to there. Ordinarily you wouldn't actually want to have a pure white material with 100% roughness, because it can create quite a noisy material, but nowadays Maxwell's good enough to handle it, to be honest. I'm just going to change my preview scene to stage 1 and refresh just to make sure I know what that material looks like. As you can see, it's not too bad, it's very nice and clean. And then just close that down and click and drag to apply it. And just remember to rename the material. And one thing I'd also like to do is to get rid of any vignetting that we might have at the corners, and that's under Render Options. Now that's already enabled at 100%. My other render options that I might need to fiddle with is the sampling level. Put that up to 16, that should be good enough. Time is 999, which I always set my renders to. And that's pretty much it, and this should be good to render. Now it's time to just click the big orange render button. Okay, so here's the finished article. It took a fair bit of time, it did surprise me on this computer. It usually should be faster than that, but whatever, you know, if it's an intensive scene it'll take that long. And I've just opened up the menus to make sure deviating is enabled at 100%. And to actually save it, just come up here to the Save Image button, click on that and save it wherever you like. Okay, so that method was a Packshot method, but it actually involved using a studio backplane, which may or may not be totally white, and if we want a totally pure white background, there is a way to do that. First of all, I'm going to hide my studio background, make sure I've got fire enabled to see what I'm looking at. And in the environment window, what I'm going to do is triple click the map dialog box, copy that, and then in the other channels, instead of saying same as background, I'm actually going to paste in the map address. And effectively you get the same effect, but now all the different channels are separate. So what I can do is change the background channel type to disabled to make it entirely black. That may or may not be the look you're going for, and in this case it's certainly not. So I can change it to active sky. And in the active sky settings, it's actually a constant and pure white dome. So the background is definitely pure white now. And then just click the big orange render button. Okay, and here's the finished article this time, and it took a little less time to render, about 20 minutes, so that's much better. That's much more what I would expect. It was confirming suspicions that the backplane was slowing down the render time, because technically there's nothing else different in this scene. Okay, so the environment is different, but actually, you know, it's not different, it's just laid out slightly differently. And I've got the background as white, which wasn't visible anyway. But because I've got rid of the studio backplane, there are a couple of issues now. Predominantly the orange from the light behind the car is shining quite a lot on the bonnet and on the windscreen. It's quite distracting, but assuming you don't mind that, then you still got the issue that the side here is actually blown out. My exposure is too high, because I can see by moving my cursor over the image that this RGB counter in the bottom right is telling me that it's actually 255, so it's pure white. So I definitely need to turn it down slightly. I can do that by just going over here to the ISO and manually putting in something different. I can see the results instantly in the preview, and just click refresh and just double check. No, it's still a bit too high, so let's try 60. I don't want to go too low because obviously there's the rest of the car to think about, and it's still saying it's a bit too high, but the rest of the car is getting a bit dark, so I've got to be careful now. Let's try 50. And that's really as low as I want to go. It's showing off the rest of the metal quite nicely, and the front of the car is a bit dark, but then it's not particularly illuminated in the first place. Press H on the keyboard to get rid of the menus. The white background is a bit overpowering. Maybe it would be better if the car was filling the frame a little bit better, but that'll do for now. Okay guys, I hope you've enjoyed this small tutorial of how to render Packshot images in Maxwell Render, either with a studio backplane and high dynamic range lighting with studio HDRI, or by getting rid of the studio and just having the same HDRI applied to the illumination, refraction and reflection channels in the environment lighting, and then using active sky as a background to give us a pure white background. Thanks very much for watching, and in a future video I will be showing how to composite this model and any model into a exterior scene. Thanks very much, see you again soon. For more information about Maxwell Render training at the University of Brighton Centre for Design Technology, email maxwellrenderbrightonscdt@gmail.com.